Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. So, think about the last time you bought a drink at the store. Maybe you grabbed a diet soda, some sparkling water, or a sports drink. But did you ever stop to think about how that single everyday choice actually translates into highly specific corporate financial reporting? Well, today we're breaking down the financial metrics of health and product transparency, and we're doing it using the SASB standards for the non-alcoholic beverages industry. We're going to look at exactly how major beverage companies are required to measure and report the revenue generated from all their different drink categories. It's honestly a fascinating look right under the hood of corporate accounting, so let's just get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the value of transparency. Second, measuring health and nutrition. Third, tracking sugar and sweeteners. Fourth, the GMO revenue split. And finally, why these metrics matter.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the value of transparency, from the consumer to the boardroom.
So we're moving way past all those flashy marketing statistics today, and we're zeroing in on the hard financial data to answer this core question. How do your drink choices actually impact a company's bottom line? You see, this bridges a massive gap. On one side, you've got a consumer, us, just looking at a nutrition label in the grocery store aisle. But on the exact opposite side, you have institutional investors evaluating a massive, multinational beverage company's adaptability to changing consumer tastes. Investors really need to know, is this company relying way too heavily on outdated product lines? Or are they successfully pivoting to what consumers actually want right now? And they don't want guesses, right? They want hard data.
And that brings us to the crucial point of how this data is actually collected. Because it's not just about tracking the sheer volume of liquids sold, like gallons or liters. No, the SASB framework explicitly requires companies to report this data in what's called the presentation currency. So whether that's dollars, euros, pounds, whatever, companies literally have to track these specific product categories directly to actual revenue. It's a true follow-the-money approach, and it leaves very, very little room for creative marketing spin. We're talking about hard, auditable cash flow tied directly to very specific types of beverages.
Moving right along to Section 2, measuring health and nutrition under the SASB framework.
Now, this brilliantly illustrates the specific regulatory codes designed to track the sales of health-conscious beverages. Take a look at this table. This is straight from the SASB standard itself. Right there in the middle, under the health and nutrition topic, you're going to see a very specific metric code, FBNB 260A.1. And look, this isn't just a friendly suggestion. It is a strict quantitative metric mandating the reporting of revenue from altered sugar beverages, all in the company's presentation currency. This right here is exactly how Wall Street tracks the health-conscious shift in real time.
So let's break that metric code down a bit further. Under FBNB-260A.1, companies have to essentially carve out their revenue into three highly specific streams. First, they have to report the revenue from zero and low-calorie or energy-free and low-energy beverages. Then they've got to report the revenue specifically from no-added sugar beverages. And finally, the revenue from artificially sweetened beverages. It really goes to show just how granular investor reporting has become these days. I mean, we're way past the simple days of just diet versus regular.
But that begs the question, what exactly makes a drink a zero or low-calorie beverage anyway? Well, the SASB standard actually notes that these definitions rely heavily on local jurisdictional laws. So a claim of 0 calories or calorie-free is measured in either kilocalories or kilojoules, and that depends entirely on the specific labeling regulations of the country where that product is sold. Practically speaking, this means multinational beverage companies have to rigorously, and I mean rigorously, map their local compliance data directly to their global financial reporting.
All right, Section 3. Tracking sugar and sweeteners and navigating the overlap.
Now, things can admittedly get a little complicated when you start looking at different types of sugar replacements, which makes strict accounting distinctions absolutely vital. For accounting purposes, SASB draws a very hard line between no added sugar and artificially sweetened. According to the framework, when a company reports its no added sugar revenue, that bucket strictly excludes zero-calorie beverages and anything with artificial sweeteners. And why is that? Well, to completely avoid revenue double counting. If a drink uses an artificial sweetener, its revenue goes straight into the artificially sweetened bucket. It keeps the financial data pristine and perfectly accurate for investors who are trying to compare product lines.
And just to be absolutely perfectly clear on what actually goes into that bucket, the framework objectively defines artificial sweeteners as chemically processed substances or food additives that are used instead of table sugar, which is sucrose, or sugar alcohol. The standard even specifically names substances. We're talking acylsulfane potassium, advantame, aspartame, neotame, saccharin, and sucralose. If a beverage contains any of these, the revenue it generates is meticulously tracked and reported under this specific financial metric.
Moving into Section 4, the GMO revenue split. Let's look at product labeling metrics.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is we're shifting our focus away from the actual health and nutritional content of the liquid itself, and we're looking at another massive consumer demand, metric FBNB 270A.2. Here, SASB mandates a direct financial revenue split based entirely on GMO labeling. A beverage company literally must disclose its revenue from products sold during the reporting period that are labeled as containing genetically modified organisms, and they have to report that completely separately from the revenue of products labeled as not containing GMOs. It is a literal dollar-for-dollar breakdown of exactly how GMO labeling affects sales.
For the purpose of this reporting, the standard defines a GMO as an organism in which genetic material has been altered in a way that just does not occur naturally by mating or natural recombination. But interestingly, for the non-GMO revenue bucket, products that carry inherent third-party non-GMO certifications, like, the non-GMO project verified label, those are automatically counted towards that non-GMO revenue stream. So think about that. Those little third-party logos you see on the bottle directly dictate which multi-million-dollar revenue column that drink falls into on the company's ledger. It's pretty wild.
And finally, Section 5, why these metrics matter, looking at the bigger picture.
So why go through all of this trouble to link revenue directly to sweeteners and GMO labels? Well, it's all about tracking shifting consumer demands and the potential financial risks that they create. This quote from the standard really just says it all. The source material neutrally points out that efforts to reduce obesity, like government regulations or taxes specifically targeting sugar-sweetened beverages, can directly influence industry profitability and consumer demand. Investors aren't tracking this stuff just for the fun of it. They are heavily evaluating regulatory and financial risk. If a local government suddenly introduces a sugar tax, an investor wants to know exactly what percentage of a company's revenue is exposed to that tax and what percentage is safely categorized as low-calorie or no added sugar. It is pure, straightforward financial risk management.
So I'm going to leave you with this thought. When you look at the sheer amount of financial reporting dedicated to tracking these ingredients, you really have to ask yourself, is a company's revenue mix of diet versus sugary drinks actually a better indicator of its future success than its traditional marketing campaigns? There's that old business saying, right? What gets measured gets managed. The next time you grab a drink, just remember that your choice isn't just a personal preference. It's a measured, categorized data point that is quite literally driving the financial strategies of the entire global beverage industry. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.